Most people think expecting the worst is just being realistic. In reality, it's a trick your brain plays to feel in control. By constantly bracing for impact, you aren't avoiding pain. You're just living through the disaster twice. Here is the simple truth about why we sabotage our own happiness. You know that person who hears good news and immediately thinks, yeah, but what's going to go wrong? The one who gets a promotion and spends the entire night wondering when they'll get fired? Who can't enjoy a good day because they're too busy waiting for the other shoe to drop? If that's you, welcome. Because what psychologists just discovered about catastrophic thinking isn't what you've been telling yourself for years, and it's going to make you rethink everything. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Expecting the worst doesn't protect you from pain. It just guarantees you'll experience it twice. Once in your imagination, vividly, repeatedly, obsessively, and then again if it actually happens, you're not being prepared. You're being tortured by hypotheticals. And your brain has convinced you this torture is useful. It's not. It's just exhausting. Let me tell you about Marcus. Got accepted to his dream graduate program. Full scholarship. Everything he'd worked for. His friends threw him a party. He smiled, said thank you, went home and spiraled for 3 hours about how he'd probably fail out, disappoint everyone, waste this opportunity, prove he was never good enough in the first place. The acceptance letter was 12 hours old, and he'd already lived through the failure. That's not pessimism. That's pre-traumatic stress disorder. You're experiencing trauma for events that haven't happened and might never happen. Here's what's actually happening in your brain. Psychologists call it defensive pessimism, and it's not the same as regular pessimism. Regular pessimism is believing things will go wrong. Defensive pessimism is believing things will go wrong, and that by believing it, you're somehow controlling the outcome. It's magical thinking disguised as realism. You think if you imagine the worst-case scenario in enough detail, you're either preparing for it or preventing it. Neither is true. You're just ruminating in high definition. Dr. Julie Norum, who studied this for decades, found something fascinating. People who use defensive pessimism perform worse than optimists, not better. Because here's what happens. When you spend all your mental energy catastrophizing, you have less energy for actual problem solving. You're so busy rehearsing the disaster that you're not focusing on preventing it. Your brain thinks it's being productive. It's not. It's spinning in place while calling it strategy. Think about what this looks like in real life. You have a date. Before you even leave the house, you've already imagined 15 ways it could go wrong. They'll think you're boring. You'll say something stupid. They won't find you attractive. The conversation will be awkward. By the time you show up, you're already exhausted from a date that hasn't happened yet. And because you're exhausted and anxious, you actually perform worse. You create the exact outcome you were trying to avoid. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy you designed yourself. But here's where it gets darker. Expecting the worst isn't really about the future. It's about the past. Somewhere, probably early, something bad happened that you didn't see coming. And your brain made a decision. Never again. If I expect the worst, I won't be blindsided. If I'm always bracing for impact, the crash won't hurt as much. Except it does hurt. Just as much. The only difference is now you've added anticipatory suffering to actual suffering. Here's the mechanism nobody explains. When you catastrophize, your body responds as if the catastrophe is real. Your cortisol spikes, your heart rate increases, your muscles tense. You're living in a state of chronic stress over imaginary threats. And after years of this, your nervous system can't tell the difference between real danger and imagined danger. Everything feels like a threat. The good news feels like a setup. The calm feels like the moment before the storm. You're not living. You're bracing. Every single day. Let me tell you what's really happening when you expect the worst. You're trying to control the uncontrollable. Because here's the uncomfortable truth about life. Bad things happen. Randomly. Unfairly. Without warning. And you can't prevent all of it. No amount of worry changes that. But worry gives you the illusion of control. If I think about it enough, if I plan for it enough, if I see it coming, then I'm in control. Except you're not. You're just anxious. There's a difference. Psychologist Dr. Robert Leahy calls this intolerance of uncertainty. Some people can sit with not knowing what's going to happen. They're okay with ambiguity, but if you always expect the worst, uncertainty feels unbearable. Not knowing is more painful than knowing it'll be bad. So your brain fills the gap with catastrophe. Because catastrophic certainty feels better than uncertain possibility. At least if you know it's going to be terrible, you can prepare. Except you can't actually prepare for imaginary disasters. You can only suffer through them mentally. Here's something that'll mess with you. People who expect the worst often had childhoods where unpredictability was dangerous. Maybe your parents' mood shifted without warning. Maybe love was conditional and you never knew what would trigger withdrawal. Maybe something traumatic happened and your child brain decided that if you'd seen it coming, you could have stopped it. So you became hypervigilant. You started scanning for danger constantly. You turned expecting the worst into a survival strategy. And it worked. Kind of. You survived. But the cost was you never stopped scanning, even when you were safe, even when things were good. Your nervous system is still stuck in that original environment where predicting danger was necessary. But you're not there anymore. You're here. And here might actually be okay, but your brain won't let you believe it. Watch what happens when something good occurs. Let's say you get a genuine compliment. Someone tells you they're proud of you, that you did great work, that they appreciate you. Your first thought isn't thank you. It's, what do they want? Or they're just being nice. Or they don't really mean it. You've become allergic to good news. Because good news feels like a trap. Like the universe is setting you up for a bigger fall. So you reject it before it can disappoint you. This is why people who expect the worst struggle in relationships. Intimacy requires vulnerability. And vulnerability requires believing that maybe, just maybe, this person won't hurt you. But if your default is everyone will eventually leave, betray, or disappoint, you can't let anyone close enough to prove otherwise. You push them away before they can abandon you. You sabotage before they can reject you. You leave before they can go. And then you point to the ending as proof you were right all along. See? I knew it would end badly. Except you engineered the ending. You were so busy expecting the worst that you created it. Here's what research on anxiety and catastrophic thinking reveals. The worst-case scenarios you imagine almost never happen. Dr. Robert Leahy found that 85% of what people worry about never occurs. And of the 15% that does happen, 79% of people report handling it better than they thought they would. Which means you're spending enormous amounts of mental energy preparing for outcomes that are statistically unlikely, and even if they happen, you'll probably handle fine. You're not being realistic. You're being irrational, but your brain has convinced you otherwise. Now let me tell you what happens when you finally let go of expecting the worst. And this is the part that terrifies you. Nothing catastrophic happens. You don't get blindsided. You don't fall apart. You just exist in the present moment without pre-living disasters. And it feels weird, almost wrong, because you've spent so long believing that your vigilance was keeping you safe. But it wasn't. It was just keeping you exhausted. So, what do you do if you're someone who always expects the worst? How do you stop bracing for impact long enough to actually live? Here's the hard truth. You have to practice disappointment tolerance. You have to let good things happen and not ruin them with catastrophic predictions. You have to sit with uncertainty without filling it with worst-case scenarios. And that's going to feel like walking without armor in a battlefield. Vulnerable, exposed, terrifying. But here's what you'll discover. Most days aren't battlefields. Most days are just days. Sometimes good, sometimes neutral, occasionally bad. But not the apocalypse you've been rehearsing. And when bad things do happen, because they will, you'll handle them. Not because you spent years preparing, but because humans are resilient. We adapt, we cope, we survive. Your ancestors survived without catastrophizing every possibility. You can too. You've been expecting the worst for so long. You've forgotten what it feels like to expect nothing, to just be present, to let the future arrive without writing its script in advance. That's not naivety. That's not toxic positivity. That's just existing without pre-traumatizing yourself. And you deserve that. You deserve to experience joy without immediately calculating when it'll end. You deserve good news without waiting for the catch. You deserve peace without mistaking it for the calm before the storm. The worst might happen, or it might not. But living like it's inevitable doesn't protect you. It just steals the present while you're busy mourning a future that doesn't exist yet. You've suffered enough. Stop volunteering for extra rounds. Tell me in the comments, what's one good thing you ruined by expecting it to go wrong? And if you're ready to stop living through disasters that never happen, hit subscribe. Next video breaks down why anxious people are actually the most emotionally intelligent. Click it. You'll finally understand why your brain works this way.